TAL, which is probably on the first section of your lab handout. What I do after I do my assessment, I just come down here and I quickly do a palpation. It doesn't take me much time at all. So just quickly screen. So for instance, the TAL would be on the anterior medial part of the talus. You felt it when we were doing subtalar joint. One of the biggest limitations with doing strain constraint well is your ability to actually palpate correctly. You know, it's not easy. So if you palpate on the anterior medial side of the talus, typically it shouldn't feel like anything, and yours feels like not much, right? And this side is a little more tender. So that would be where the TAL is. And let's do another one in this. And then, for instance, dorsal. Could you pass me my little handout that's sitting over there? So I can refer to the numbers and not get you totally confused. And then the LCA, which is under the subtalar joint pronation section, we would palpate that on the lateral aspect of the tuber of the calcaneus. So you could palpate right in the center as the book shows, but I usually palpate it at the top, at the joint line, and she's good. Maybe we'll use Justin, right?
Yeah, Justin.
Oh, pretty tender on that side too. Yeah. And these motions relate to subtalar joint mobility. That's for the last one, and TAL would be on the medial side, so it's ankle dorsiflexion, but not just any ankle dorsiflexion. It'd be ankle dorsiflexion with inversion. So if we go ahead and palpate, retest. Here, go ahead, hold it up. What inversion? We're working on tibialis anterior. Hold it, yeah. Very strong. And any of these should be pretty good too. All right, so lateral calcaneus for you people on this side. It's the lateral side of the tuber. You could go in the center of the tuber, which is what the book would show, but I usually go on the proximal side, on the joint line. And hold right there. Hold. All right, so let's do a technique. Why don't you go ahead and line your back. Line your stomach. So when you do these, we'll do these two first, and these will probably be the ones that I use the most. They're very powerful. Why? Because subtalar joint and talocrural joint are pretty important, right? So here's a way. Let's see how much dorsiflexion she's got. Here's my dorsiflexion measure. Let's call it 5. You can see it. Let's call it 5. All right. So in this position, if you're going to palpate TAL, I'll do it for you guys first, and then you guys afterwards. I usually take my proximal hand, wrap my finger around the back of the leg, and this is the anterior medial side of the talus. But if you grab a foot, and so for you folks, it's my proximal hand. I glide my finger all the way around to the anterior medial side of the talus. Stand there. Hello. Just slide over a touch. This is a right foot. So I just did this, and I palpate it around. So I'm going to take that discomfort away. Is that all right? Yeah. Nothing exciting. And since I do thrust as well as strain counterstrain, I always let people know, oh, this is the slow and painless method, as opposed to the fast and possibly painful method. Does that feel now? So as in my handout, I have positioned her in prone, with the knee flexed to 90 if she can do it. I'm dorsiflexing a little bit, but mostly I'm doing some inversion, right? I'm palpating that spot, but no longer I could take my finger off. I don't have to have my finger on, but I just rest it there because, so that I have confidence and she has confidence that I'm still palpating the same spot when I'm done. Because in the beginning, trust me, you will not, the person will think, oh, that's a different spot, and you will also think that too, because they won't have the same response. And then we'll hang out here for 90 seconds, and I usually use this opportunity to find out about person's lives. What are you doing this weekend? Nice. From where?
From upstate.
How far upstate? Near the Hudson River, right? cold. Really cold. We took a college trip to Binghamton and Cornell, but luckily we did it earlier in the season. So, hey, did you just feel that just happened? So then you just relax and palpate that again. How's that feel? A little tender, all right. Something more. But, you know, it's not, we're not going to write home about it, but something more. All right, well, go ahead, flip over on your back. So you're like this. Hold it. Pretty strong. All right. So that's TAL, and you could use that for people who are lacking ankle dorsiflexion or might have pain here or some weakness. Hold that thing, Ken. Just in case you thought that maybe in the intervening moments you got stronger in some other direction, hold. It didn't happen, because each thing that we do has one outcome, not another. So for instance, in that Collins article, when she looked at chronic ankle sprained people, if you didn't purposely do the one thing that was going to relate to the one outcome, then it didn't necessarily happen. All right? Go ahead, line your side facing that way, and other way. Did you bring a sweater or something like that? Oh, this is good. This is a pretty nice little voltage. All right. So, does this look familiar? It's the exact same setup. But, you know, sometimes maybe you didn't feel so comfortable doing that. You know, or maybe the patient didn't feel comfortable. Maybe you were worried about that person's knee. So it's the same setup with a little bit of difference. So we're going to palpate again. So I'm taking my middle finger. I'm going to wrap around this way and palpate on the side of the tuber. So that looks like this. If I was lying down, it would be like this. I'm wrapping around the bottom of the foot, wrapped around, and I'm palpating right here. Or some people would say there, but you know, you want to throw that. I'm going to hold that and let the heel of my hand be on the posterior aspect of the calcaneus. So we didn't stress this too much, but remember I talked about in the review of gait kinesiology that there are two ligaments in the subtalar joint that sometimes get affected during ankle sprains, right? And they're smack in the middle. And you know, I didn't bother telling you how there are different. There's one set of facets that go concave and one set that go convex. But you remember that from some lecture somewhere. So in order to get that motion here, we're going to have to go move in one direction on one side of the calcaneus and the other direction on the other. Here's my spot. That's the tender spot, right? You just leave your knee resting there. I'm going to push down here pretty hard. So it's recommended aim for 50 pounds of pressure. So you really put your whole body weight on there. My other hand will help this talus go that way while the back goes down, so that way we have the opposite motions. But I don't need a big motion, so really I'm just going to rest here. And let's see. How's that feel now? It doesn't. Can we hang out like this? So while we're hanging out, anybody have a question? I'm really just pushing the calcaneus straight down, 50 pounds of pressure. My right hand, my cross. My left hand is basically resting, and it's just holding it there, not so much to bring that part up, but just to not allow it to go straight down. In the manipulation, it was general. We just brought everything into eversion, right? But that's not actually how the joint moves, because the joint goes in a circle because of those two ligaments in the center. So, if you're going, remember I started the class talking about thrust as a way of gapping. If all you want to do is gap the joint, then you could do that. But this is not. We're going to go in the
You're not looking at the muscle, it's not like
right. In the process. Any other questions?
The tender point is on the lateral calcaneus?
The tender point is on the lateral floor side of the calcaneus, in the middle of the tuber.
And you assess it by prior feeling the area.
But I don't have to hold on to it. I can move my fingers. So another way that this might come up is you're doing your manual muscle test, you find weakness. If you find weakness, it's probably dysfunction underneath it. So look for it. Don't just assume, oh, there's weakness because the muscle is weak. What's your name?
Robert.
I mean, Robert clearly has muscle in his anterior deltoid, right? So why was he weak? if you find weakness, you have to assume for your average person in orthopedic practice, it's not just weakness, it's probably something else. Look for the underlying source first. How's that?
I noticed that you knew tender was a base on his face, or did you feel a little?
So for you, as you do this with each other, what you should do is say, oh, is that tender? Yeah, it is. And then you try to move until you find, all right, is it still tender? A little bit. Even less tender? You're aiming for where it's not tender anymore by shortening those tissues. But I didn't do that because I'm feeling with my finger, and I'm giving this talk in the meantime, so I don't want to waste my time with that. But you guys will have to do that.
Did you actually feel?
All right? These two are really important. Make sure you get a chance to do, at the very least, these two. The rest is gravy, all right?